Next up, please welcome Google's product lead for the identity platform, authentication, account security, and safety, John Gronberg.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Gronberg. I'm the product lead for Google Sign-In. I'm here today to share a few of our learnings from our rollout of Passkeys across both consumer and enterprise accounts. We have a few billion active accounts, so we have a lot of people who keep us honest as we roll out new authentication technologies. I'm hopeful that the stories today will help give you guys some ideas as you're working on your own Passkey implementations, and also serve as a blueprint for some of the things we need to think about on our shared path forward on this Passkey journey. So I'll cover 3 separate sections today. First will be Google's experience deploying Passkeys, the different steps we took, and some of the key milestones we hit. Next, I'll talk about a few of the key learnings that we have from that period. And then I'll talk about our shared path forward and some of the things that I think we all need to do together to ensure Passkeys are successful and that we can eventually get rid of passwords. So before I dive into the details of our launch, I want to talk a little bit about the Passkey ecosystem. It's fairly complex, and there are 3 key layers. And in fact, this diagram is a little simplified. You could argue that the platform layer with browsers and client OSs is actually 2 layers. But at the top, you have websites and apps, the relying parties that many people talk about for signing in. And then you have the platforms, which are your browsers like Chrome or Edge or Firefox, as well as your platforms like Android or iOS, or on desktop, Windows and Windows and Chrome OS and Mac OS. Each of those platforms will have a proprietary interface into the underlying credential manager or password manager. It can be standalone options like Dashlane or 1Password, or built-in options like Google Password Manager. The focus of this talk is going to be up top, but it's important to think about these all holistically, because ultimately all 3 of these layers need to work together seamlessly to deliver a positive experience for users. So when I think about the goals for Passkeys at Google, it starts many years ago, in 2012 with the formation of the FIDO Alliance, all the way through to a number of years in the future when eventually Passkeys are ubiquitous. Looking at Google specifically, in 2023, our goal was to show that Passkeys have potential to work at scale. In 2024, this year, we wanted to see Passkey adoption reaching a tipping point, which means that we see self-sustaining momentum for Passkey adoption across our user base. And one of the key elements for that is to ensure that the Passkey experience is seamless for all users in all contexts, whether they're tech savvy or not, or whatever setup of devices and other technologies they may have. Looking ahead, we want to get to Passkey ubiquity, where users choose to migrate away from passwords because we've solved all the rough edges and we've delivered a positive experience that's faster, safer, and more comfortable for them. So I want to zoom into a few more details and talk about milestones in our deployment. We launched Passkeys on World Password Day 2023, which is May the 4th for those watching closely. About a month later, we launched our Passkeys in beta for our enterprise customers. So pretty early on, we were able to have Passkeys available for any user of Google accounts. By the end of the year, we had reached 500 million sign-ins using Passkeys. A lot of those sign-ins included what are called re-authentications. So one thing that we found is that Passkeys are a great use, or a great tool for re-authentication use cases, where a user might be performing some kind of sensitive action, and we want to perform a re-authentication to ensure the security of a session. After 1 year, we had hit 1 billion sign-ins with Passkeys and 400 million accounts choosing to use Passkeys. So the first 1 year of Passkeys was pretty successful for us. Some really great adoption. So far in 2024, we've launched a couple key components. One was adding Passkeys for enrollment into our advanced protection program. In 2024, billions of people will be voting across the globe, or already have voted, across many different elections. Obviously, there's a kind of big one coming up in the US in not too long. The advanced protection program is our highest user security system for users that are at high risk for targeted attacks. This can be politicians, journalists, activists, or other users of that sort. Rolling out Passkeys for enrollment in APP led to a step change in enrollment in the program itself. And so we've seen tens of thousands, and in fact hundreds of thousands of new users adopting the Advanced Protection Program to help keep their accounts safe. A few weeks ago, we rolled out Passkey autofill. That's turns Passkey into a one-step sign-in for users, where we can completely fill out their username as well as their passkey in order to authenticate. And that, again, has led to a significant acceleration in adoption of passkeys across our user base. As of today, we have over 2.5 billion sign-ins with 800 million accounts using passkeys on our Google consumer platform. You might look at that and think, well, that's not that many sign-ins for the number of accounts you have. But it's also important to keep in context that these are consumer accounts. A sign-in is not a common occurrence for a user. They may only sign in when they change devices or have some other event that causes them to go back and authenticate to their account. In general, we have very long-lived sessions for our consumer accounts, provided that the security state doesn't change. So the important takeaway here is that we're seeing real momentum with our adoption of passkeys and our users. Some of the reasons for this momentum are on this slide. And I love sharing this data and also seeing this data from Microsoft and Sony, and as well as Amazon coming out next. It's really great to see how positive the experience has been with users adopting passkeys. So we're seeing, on average, across our different platforms, 30% higher sign-in success rates with passkeys compared to other methods. This also includes controlling for attack traffic, because typically password success rates skew a little lower when we have credential attacks and things like that. Also, users are logging in faster with passkeys, 20% faster. That's not always the case, which I'll get into, but it's often the case. Saving people time during authentication is a really big deal. They don't go somewhere to sign in, they go there to use the products. And so it's important to have that fast and smooth experience. I'll also note that our faster number was much higher early in our rollout, as we had highly sophisticated users, tech-savvy users, and early adopters. The numbers have settled down a little bit as we've gone into our larger user base. We've also surveyed that user base to ask how they feel about passkeys. Nearly 2/3 feel that passkeys are both easier and safer to use than passwords. Another 30% are neutral, we'll win them over someday, and a few single-digit percentage are detractors. So overall, those numbers look good, but I know we have more work to do. So I want to drill into mobile platforms a little bit. This is where we're seeing the most success. On these platforms, we've had a head start because users already trust and are familiar with biometric authentication, which is basically how we pitch passkeys. Just sign in with your face or use your screen lock. Verification with a passkey is a winning journey on mobile. It's fast, familiar, and seamless. However, users still do run into some hiccups on mobile, and that is when they need to scan a QR code or bootstrap a passkey onto a new device. But on both Android and iOS, we're seeing significantly faster authentications, 50% on Android, 40% on iOS. And so we're also starting to see benefits on these passkey users when they transition onto new devices with the latest generation of both iOS and Android devices. On desktop, we're still seeing more room for improvement. Windows is one of our large platforms, but not all Windows machines are eligible for passkeys due to various constraints. Also, we see slower authentication speeds on Windows on average compared to passwords, which was a bit of a surprise for us. And so this is something that we're working through a number of experiments and other tests to see how we can get that speed up for our users. On Mac OS, we're seeing faster performance, but it's a much smaller percentage of our traffic. iCloud Keychain is a key factor in improving the experience for users here, since the Google Passkeys can be available immediately across different devices on a credential manager that isn't a Google Credential Manager. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about our specific experience, the metrics that we've observed. Now I want to step back and talk about the overall learnings that we've had from the last year. I could spend hours going into all the details here, but as this is a keynote, I want to keep it a little more high level and give you some of the big points. Also, I know we're running a few minutes behind on schedule, so I'm trying to compress our time. So for users, we've seen that number one, we need to lead with the ease of use story or the speed story. It resonates and it works. People generally grumble about signing in, so anything we can do to make that process easier and faster is a win. It's compelling. We need to show that we're there to help users, not to scare them about credential theft and other things like that. Second, we've seen that passwords are not something that users are quite ready to give up yet. They want to see that they still have something to fall back to that they're familiar with. So we treat passkeys as optional for our Google accounts today. It's an add-on that helps it be easier to sign in, but you still have those familiar methods to sign it or to fall back to if you need. Third, users are anxious about losing their devices when it comes to passkeys. There's a sentiment among our users that passkeys are stuck on a device that they're using, and they're worried that if they lose their device, they may not be able to sign in again. They can't scribble down a passkey and stick it in a 3-ring binder like they can with a password. So this bit of change for them is about easing them into a passkey world. And over time, we hope to address some of these areas and get them comfortable with passkeys as the sole solution for logging in. Now let's talk about insights from more of a security point of view. The first, which I mentioned already, is that passkeys are a great re-authentication tool. It's easier, higher success rates. It enables us to use reauth in more places, which helps us increase security. It slows attackers down and helps mitigate some of the risks around cookie theft and session credential theft, which also Matt mentioned earlier, DBSC, another super interesting area that we're working on that will be used in conjunction with passkeys to help secure users better. Next, there's this fundamental change when you start thinking about users logging in with passkeys, and that's that the credential manager becomes the root of trust in a way that it hasn't been before. Every user needs to store a passkey in some kind of credential manager. So from an account security standpoint, we need to think of that credential manager as the root for any user. A third and wholly unsurprising point is that attackers are already putting passkeys into their playbooks. So what we see is that an account may be taken over, typically through phishing, password login, and then immediately an attacker may go in and add a passkey onto that account on a device that they control. So what that means is that as you think about your post-hijacking remediation flows, you need to add removal of passkeys in as standard operating procedures, along with resetting of passwords. And finally, raising the security bar is the next step for us. For Google accounts, we focused on ease of use for the time being to drive adoption of passkeys. To raise the security bar for accounts, we need to require that users enable two-step verification or two-factor authentication. This will follow, but in time with users being ready to make that change alongside the adoption of passkeys. So this brings us to the last section. What's next? It's clear we made a lot of progress. Passkeys are becoming commonly understood tools for authentication, and we expect billions of people across the internet will or have encountered them. But there's a lot more to do. So this comes to the shared path forward. First, we can address concerns for user concerns and pain points with standards-based solution. It's why we're all here today. I mean, kind of selling past the close to say we need to do this for a bunch of people that are here at a standards conference. But it's important to remember that things like Credential Exchange Protocol, or CXP, will help users have a consistently positive journey with passkeys. Second, ease of use can drive adoption. People want to get on with their lives, and passkeys help them do that faster. Third, the device bootstrap scenario is critical. That first moment of getting a passkey onto a device when you've already created it is so important to get right for users. As they think about those cross-device flows, new device flows, these are points of unfamiliarity and sometimes fear for users. As much as we can smooth out that experience and make the device transition much better, that will help enforce the momentum that we have around adopting passkeys. And finally, investing in, socializing, and adopting shared best practices. The reason I'm on stage and others have been on stage talking about their experiences rolling out passkeys is to help everybody understand and see what the things we can do are to drive that adoption of passkeys. There's also things like the launch of the Passkey Central site, where we can share information both from a business value standpoint as well as from a best practices standpoint in how to adopt passkeys for your own implementation. So it's critical that we all work together to deliver a seamless experience for our users. All right, with that, thank you. I appreciate everyone attending this talk. I'll be around afterwards if anyone wants to talk in more detail about some of our experiences rolling out passkeys. I look forward to seeing all of you at the rest of the FIDO Authenticate conference. Thank you so much.